Hello everybody, it's your favorite girl AISHA, Aisha. Welcome back to another exciting segment from Third Age Group. Today we're talking all things mental health awareness. It is the month of November, so we'll be looking specifically at men's health. Today I'm not alone, we'll be speaking to Mr. Joshua Cooper with some experience in palliative care, education and corporate wellness. We'll be sharing some insights to know how to take care of our physical and mental health. So Joshua, thank you so much for joining us today. So my first question to you is, what are the most common challenges that are experienced in terms of mental health, specifically for males?
All right. That's a good question. I'm going to speak into mental health for men, but it can go over into male and females, not necessarily specific to one gender or the other. However, some common aspects that we find with mental health in men is the common burnout, stress, depression, anxiety. One other aspect that we do find is loneliness, but when we speak about loneliness, it's not necessarily I'm alone in the sense of I don't have a relationship, or it can feel that they're in a community, that they're surrounded by people, but they feel isolated in the sense of, they can't maybe reach out, or they have to, in a sense, be more masculine. Reaching out might be seen as, a more weaker trait. You have to be strong. You have to be, in charge of yourself. And seeking someone else's assistance might not be that seen as a good thing for them. Yeah. So it's then isolating themselves from others and the community as well.
Yeah. So on that aspect, if we're looking at specifically the idea of male masculinity, like what impact has that on the mental health of men? And I know for me as a female, I would qualify as more of a masculine energy. So like what impact does that have on men today?
Definitely. Good question. That's why I mentioned first is that when we speak, we just want to make sure that it is not just for men and women, there's a separate line. There are boundaries that are crossed. Yeah. But when we're looking at that aspect, we can say, all right, what does culture have to say? What was your upbringing, right? Because when we speak into culture specifically, we're not necessarily saying, okay, there's a specific overarching culture. Yes, we agree. You can come from a Zulu, Sotho background, and that might have a cultural influence. But when we break it down, we can say, okay, what are the smaller cultures that have influenced maybe your mental health? We can say, what was your upbringing like? Because a household has its own culture. What maybe if we do Christmas time is coming, let's use that for example. Some people say we must start putting up the Christmas tree now. That's a cultural aspect. It's part of your family's culture. So then it goes on to say, how was I brought up? Who were the role models in that area, that phase that said, okay, if I need help, let's say it's a father figure, reached out. Then maybe that's how you engage in mental health as well. I'm stuck here. It's not a physical thing. It's something else that's going on. Maybe I reach out to a practitioner or professional or somebody else as a stepping stone. It's not always going straight to the practitioner self. There are different types of practitioners that we need to be aware of as well. But when we're looking at going back to the cultural aspect is who were our role models? Who do we look up to? Who showed us the way to maybe show emotion? Was someone telling me I'm not allowed to show emotion in a specific way? Is it wrong to be in this specific mindset? Must I always be in this mindset? And like forcing other mindsets down or other emotions down or other ways of expressing ourselves. So that's where that cultural aspect is not just necessarily the culture of the country. It can also be broken down to your level of what happened at home as well.
So good. Yeah. And do you find yourself seeing that a lot in practice? Are you finding that males are uncomfortable with the, societal definition of masculinity?
The societal definition of masculinity is changing, actually. Yeah. So in practice, we're seeing more men come to us for maybe not going saying this is my issue, but maybe seeing it as more of a strength building aspect as I am actually developing instead of saying, oh, I have a challenge or an issue I'm dealing with. They bring it more, come forth as like a positive aspect of I'm actually growing stronger because I'm dealing with a challenge I'm not able to face on my own or I'm stuck. And then not obviously trying to go away from seeing things like alternative measures that might not be good for you. Maybe like an example for men specifically is a very active they want to be proactive, and then they will, in case of seeking assistance, they might be using alcohol, substances to address certain issues instead of going. But we're seeing less of that, more men coming to us and saying, I have this challenge, I want to face it. How do I face it? It's more courage induced, it's more it's more skills building. Like, it's not seen as this, oh, it's this problem, I need this doctor, I need this kind of certain kind of care. It's almost like they're defining their own care, and the practitioners kind of just build around that. We also kind of latching on to, oh, this is how you want to see mental health. Let's build with you, because we don't want to push you away. We don't want to just focus on a specific area of mental health. And just on top of that is, again, with the masculine and feminine, is we're not just, when people say traditional therapies, we always think about the guy that's lying on the couch and someone's standing behind them and there's a drawing and they're trying to figure something out. Is therapy is changing constantly. There's always different kinds of therapies. There's different kinds of ways of engaging in mental health and therapy. So it's also finding a therapist that works for you in the way that you want to do things. For example, I also do a lot of short solution focus. It's a short therapy. Men tend to like that because it's goal orientated. It's not this open thing. There's a goal, we work towards it. They feel like they have achieved, they have developed, and then they move on, and then maybe they come back for something else. But then they feel that they have the courage to come back because it's worked. This worked for me. So it's kind of like you can shop around with mental health. There's different types of therapies that work for different types of people. It's not just this traditional way of thinking, is this person sitting here and trying to ask me some questions. There are some therapies where you don't talk at all. So you're there with the therapist, it's a safe space. I think it's brain spotting and EMDR are the therapies that you don't really do much talking. You kind of experience your inner self. You go and say, okay, what's going on with me, where you are? And that's then maybe brought into talk therapy. But yeah, so you get different kinds. So if people don't want to talk about the challenge that they're facing, they just want to be able to work through it, there are therapies out there for you.
Wow. George, thank you so much. That's so insightful.
Yeah.
I think that's been enough for me. I'm not alone today. We have a full panel with their own questions. So we're going to move on to Marius, who's going to ask the first question. Thanks, Marius.
All right, Josh. Now, between men and women, I think, is it possible to differentiate the symptoms between men and women when it comes to depression and anxiety?
All right. Yeah. So when it comes to that, again, just have to make sure that we are not crossing lines. Is sometimes some people may feel that they experience emotions differently. We must always keep that in mind. We spoke about culture just now. It's also experiencing that. How does culture define how I express emotion or feel something? But yes, there are some common aspects when it differs with anxiety and depression. It might not look the same. So when it comes to that, we say, okay, depression has a set number of tick boxes. We'll say, okay, that, it's a sadness, or it's a deep, melancholy. I can't get up, I cannot move, I feel that I don't want to do anything, nothing excites me. Those are when you think of depression, that's your common aspect. But with men, it can be because they're maybe not allowed to feel sadness in a specific way, or they are ashamed of feeling this way, so they need to be more in control. They push into a different direction. So when it comes to depression, we might actually see a more active type of depression where the person is not necessarily this person in bed lying around. It could be with males, there's a withdrawn aspect. So they will withdraw from anything. It could be work, communicating at work, or with work engagements, team building. They'll probably not engage with that. It could be family withdrawal. They are not engaging with family members. They'd rather be in a room. They'd rather be away from somebody else. So that withdrawal. And then another active one is they might be aggressive or angry. They're actually frustrated, they're angry because they're feeling these things. They don't know how to overcome them, maybe on their own, or can express this. And then it becomes that anger, an outburst, or it's more of like frustration. So then it's a more active kind of depression. It doesn't look the same as this melancholy. And with anxiety, it can be the same, muscle tension, frustration as well, because it's like I'm frustrated about why I can't do this, or I'm worried about this thing constantly. Then like I said, men tend to be more proactive or active, so they engage in things that are more active. And that comes into the case of, okay, this person's anxious, but they're engaging in maybe activities that would not necessarily be what an anxious person would. I'm worried, I'm stressed, I don't really want to engage with other people, but I'll actually go out maybe at a bar and then be with those people. So you're not withdrawing, but you're using then alcohol and those things to then engage in a different way. So it's then using those things to, adapt, but it's not necessarily the good way to adapt and address those challenges. Yeah.
So with that, Joshua, just maybe as a follow-up to this question, what's the support that the families can provide to? So how do you deal with somebody, especially a male that's going through depression?
Okay, so if you look at that, first of all, it's how you want to first engage with that person. How do I even talk to that person about the situation? So firstly, it's identify. So we'll ask people to identify. Always look out for strange things. If it's your partner, you'll know that they're now withdrawn very much from a situation, or they used to do this, but they're not doing it anymore, or they find themselves, it's difficult to get up, it's difficult to do this. It's just listening. It's just observing. And then when they either bring it up themselves, or if you want to bring it up, I always say, let's not be too direct, as in, I see this. It can be more of a curiosity thing. Just think curiously, be curious with them. So it's like, okay, I feel I can't get up today. And you go, oh, how long has that been going on for? Is that something that's bothering you? They become curious with you, and they engage with you. Then when you engage in that way, it's not giving what we would say advice. So advice, therapists themselves, we won't give advice, because advice comes from either you have to experience it yourself. If I don't experience it myself, how can I give you advice? And engaging in, maybe you come from trauma, I haven't experienced that trauma, how can I give you advice on that? We provide guidance using therapeutic approaches. So we ask people to, obviously you don't have therapeutic approaches, but it's, okay, we don't provide, this advice, we provide guidance in the sense of, have you seen somebody? Would you like to see somebody? How would you like to engage with this? And just on men as well, another way to engage specifically on men topic is, sometimes we've seen it's not always conducive when you say, let's sit down and talk. They become men will maybe become, okay, it's now a formal thing. So I need to kind of control myself in that situation, where in therapy you need to be more free, vulnerable, the space to do something else that you don't necessarily have to be in full control. Let the therapist take on some responsibility so that you can process what you need to. So with men, it could also be, if you want to start this conversation, can we go for coffee? Because then that becomes a more natural space to feel like, I haven't been sleeping. And you go, okay, so how long has that been going on for? And then suggesting, a guidance is, have you seen someone? Have you gone to someone? Is this a problem for you? Do you feel it is a problem? So that kind of conversation can start. And then from there, the support is basically being present. It's not necessary everybody needs to be a therapist or a counselor. It's being who you need to be in that role. Is who have you been for that? Is this a partner? Have you been that kind of person? Just be there, be present. Your mere presence helps. Just being available helps. So it's not necessary you have to have the answers, because the advice then kind of stimulates you to push to have the answer. You don't have to have the answer. So it's just maybe being lost with them, going, okay, well, we don't know what to do. Let's check that out. Let's be curious about that. So it's a type of engagement. Hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you, it does.
How can workplaces or schools better support men's psychological health?
Very good question. And it's a very needed question, because all these spaces have, both sexes, both genders is male and female, but how can the schools and corporations or businesses help with mental health in general, not necessarily for men alone, but it's creating a space to be vulnerable, having the opportunity to be vulnerable, to have someone that's available. It's creating community. A lot of times, like schools have a community. We've all been to school. It's that like community where you can either find your group, find the people that you need. At work, it becomes the same thing. Not everyone is going to be vulnerable and say, I have had this trauma this weekend, I'm going to speak to you about it. It's not necessarily that. But when it comes to assisting anyone in a workspace or at a school, it can be, if you want to be a colleague, like I mentioned, it's just being open. being curious, allowing them to maybe go through their own thought processes and say, oh, well, I haven't been sleeping for weeks. That doesn't sound great, and then getting them through that and say, is there something you want to do about it? Maybe they say, yeah, I'll do something about it. Maybe they can say, do you have somebody, a doctor you would like to refer? Yeah, just then give them a referral, have it open. But generally is, again, allowing spaces to be vulnerable, allowing spaces to be open for the mindset. Team building is always a good thing. Help everyone feel who everybody is. How are you in my team? What do I do? Who can I be open with? Is there someone available for that? So that's generally how that is. And then obviously, not everyone can have a mental health practitioner at all spaces, but just making sure the space is safe, for everybody. Is it someone harming somebody else, or somebody? I work at a school now, so it's when you see strange behavior, when you see behavior that is not necessarily this person is bullying, or this person is aggressive, or this person's not doing their homework. Is there actually something else going on? It's then addressing that, bringing them into that safe space and go, look, we see this. We're hearing kind of a cry for help, maybe in the sense, but do you want to do something about it? And then usually when they have that space to go, okay, this person's listening to me. This person's not here to judge me. This person's not here to discipline me. They want to know what's actually happening to me. When that space is available, it tends to help and support everybody in that regard. Yeah.
How do traditional ideas of masculinity, such as be strong or don't cry, affect men's emotional well-being?
We spoke about culture as well, so that does play a role. Like I said, culture in your home, culture in general. How does that, contribute to this? But when we say in a negative sense, maybe it contributes negatively to, you're not allowed to cry, you need to be in control, you need to be able to show your emotions in a specific way. What happens then is we look at, okay, can you identify those emotions? Can you actually express those emotions? Because what normally happens is if someone tells you, no, you have to be strong, so you can't cry, you cannot be this specific way. Think of an emotion like steam or an energy. You're born with it. Everyone has it. Everyone has the emotion to be, to be sad, to be happy, to be, angry, to be all those aspects. They are there. They are present. But when you're told you cannot do this, you can't cry, you have to man up, you can't be like this, what happens is that stays there. That emotion is there. The energy is there. It just doesn't know you don't know what to do with it. So what then happens is, like a river, when you try to block it, it's going to find another way around. So what is the other way around this is, okay, what did you think is acceptable behavior or an acceptable way to express myself? So when we look at that, we look at how maybe in the sense of men, we will take sadness and it will become anger. So they will express sadness in anger as well. Not just anger, but because that's how the river was forced to flow, that becomes the situation. And we often, we look in, this is not necessarily for males alone, it's in general. I've seen quite a few clients who are sometimes not unable to just identify what actually am I feeling above all the other feelings. And how can I pinpoint it? Because they're like, I'm crying, but I'm not sad. Yeah, because you can be angry, you can be frustrated, you can be all these other things. It's like, but with men, how that can enforce is they can't identify that I'm actually sad now because it has been so interconnected with aggression or anger. That was the only outlet they had, for example. That becomes the issue because now I'm at a funeral, but I'm either acting out, someone has passed, and I'm quite aggressive towards everybody. I'm pushing everyone away, isolating again, but being aggressive about it. They are sad, but because sadness was not an expressed emotion, it wasn't an emotion that was allowed to exist or be vulnerable, it is then directed in that way. And that is how it can negatively affect a person, is that those emotions get used in different ways and they can often be more damaging than helpful in that regard.
How do lifestyle habits like sleep, exercise, and diet influence mental health in one's day-to-day life?
Yeah. All right. I like this question because it's a question that comes up with everything. When you're in practice, you're also looking at what are people doing? What are you, other than, oh, I have this challenge, what else are you doing? How are you engaging in your day-to-day life? Sleep, very important, guys. Sleep is so important. Sleep does a lot of things for you. It's the time where you get to process a day. You get to process anything that's happening. It could be a way you're processing emotions, not necessarily in your waking self. It can be while sleeping. Your body needs to kind of have that time to address those things. But physically as well, the body needs to rest. During the day, you might be stressed, you might be anxious. The body needs the time to actually relax and reset itself. That's very important. So we do talk about receiving about 6 hours of sleep if possible. If that is something is disrupting you, please check that one out. It is good to sleep because, for example, let's do this. If you are not well rested, you could be irritable. When you're irritable, you come to work irritable. That one thing doesn't, because in a day, you're not guaranteed that, oh, I've planned my day, but that one thing is gonna go well. And then it doesn't. So then you went from irritated to annoyed, and then from annoyed, you come home and you're aggressive with everybody because you're like, my day has just gone the wrong way. And that's could have all just been because of a lack of sleep. And then when we go to eating, diet, your gut health is so, so important. So your feel-good hormones are also generated is in the gut area. So when it's happy, you're happy. So checking out, is my gut healthy? Do I have gut issues? Should I check? So that's a physical check, but the physical self has an impact on the mental self. If you want to take that to anxiety and depression as well, anxiety, depression, what it does is it enhances issues that are already there, and it can enhance physical issues as well. So if you have, for example, an ache or a pain somewhere, being anxious increases your inflammatory response, which then makes that pain all the more painful. When someone is in a low mood set, a depressed mood set, a melancholy, things feel worse than they are because the hormones are being produced. Then the mind goes, oh, this is worse than it actually is. It goes down that cycle. And that can have a physical effect on you as well. You can physically feel worse than that. So it's very important to be active as well with the exercise. But I always tell people, not everyone wants to go to gym, lift the weight, it's fine. There are other ways to exercise, other ways to do things. If that is your way to do it, then that is your way to do it. But it's just to get the blood flowing, get things, your endorphins running, just to reduce that anxiety, that stress, and also get your body to work the negative stuff. Yeah.
Joshua, I think there's this stigma that men don't really talk about their emotions or their mental health. What are some strategies or ways that we can implement to make it easier or to make it more open for men to talk about mental health and specifically also emotions in that line?
Like I said earlier, the strategies are to provide one good and educated information. So knowing if you want to tell someone to go to see somebody else, we want them to have information that is plausible. We don't want to have the wrong kind of information. Like I said earlier, there are different therapies for different people. It's not just that one kind of therapy that exists. There are different practitioners. So from our side, from our space, it's always developing and making sure that people have that information. So that's why we are here today, and I'm grateful for that, is to show off that we do have other ways to deal with, aspects. And you mentioned like emotions. That changes in therapy itself. How do you want to deal with emotions? It's not necessarily what the practitioner wants to do, it's what you want to do. So we can maybe work with a specific emotion, we can work with what you're feeling and see what that is. If, like I mentioned earlier with you're stuck or you're sad, but you are expressing it in anger. So what do we do there is, how do we unhook that? So that's what we do in therapy. But in general, if you want to speak to general populations, making sure everyone has access to a practitioner or information that is correct, not false information, that this is the way to do this or this is the way to do that. There is a lot of misinformation flying around, especially now with AI being so active. It is influencing things. So just making sure people double check. And then, like we said earlier, being open, being vulnerable, allowing space to be vulnerable, allowing men to have that space and to express how they feel that emotion is to be. So some people may be sad, but it's not necessarily tears of sadness. It just might be melancholy, but it's not necessarily depression. It's just I'm low today. I'm not in that mood set. I'm not ready to do certain things. But saying that, okay, that's the way you experience that. What is that? You know, if you're saying male child, looking at them and want to maybe break that generational stigma that's going on. Especially when we talk about the culture earlier, we always talk about like generational trauma, but there's also generational cultural aspects. Maybe we say, okay, I express myself like this, and then maybe my father stopped me from doing that. So I might want to express that emotion in a specific way. How can I do that? And how can I make sure that my son going forward also feels that he can do that? So that's one way of breaking that stigma as well. Another way which is coming out now, is a lot of men actually talk about it. They're sports stars that are out there. They tell, okay, I went to this and helped me break this block I had. Now I can bat better, or I can bowl better, or I can do this thing that was stuck. I couldn't do this. Now I can do that. So it's helpful to speak, and your experience. What did you experience in mental health? Was it a good experience? Did it help? How did it help? Being unafraid, being courageous in that sense, that helps break stigma. It doesn't always sound like, oh, that's the hero, superhero move, but it is good enough just to talk, is to say that is an open topic. I did that, not necessarily pouring out like you did in therapy, but saying, I was stuck here and I went to see someone and this person helped me and now I feel I'm good where I am. So that's basically breaking stigma.
How can caregivers and staff like us recognize when somebody might need professional mental health? And how can we approach that conversation with empathy, especially towards men going forward?
Yeah, well, thank you for that question. It's a very good one. It's why I brought this assessment that's before all of you today. This is not necessary. This is a check-in, right, for everybody. It's not a formal assessment. It is just to check yourself. This one specifically looks at self-care. And self-care is not necessarily taking a bubble bath, although it can be part of the self-care routine. This is to check in on all aspects. So we have physical, we have psychological, we have spiritual, and then we have, in this one specifically, we have your corporate, your business, what is your goal there as well. So checking in on yourself. So if you can just quickly put your attention there. For this assessment, just so that you can go over, you can do it in your own time. I will not see it. Do not worry. Do not panic. There's the 1, 2, and 3. So obviously, 1, I do this poorly, or I do not really get to this much. 2, I do this okay. 3, I do this well, or I would like to improve this. So the like to improve this aspect is just, if you haven't started something like that at all, it's just to get you thinking about it. So it's basically you rate yourself in your physical self-care, your psychological, spiritual, professional, and social. And then this hopefully gets you thinking to see if there's a place that might be lacking somewhere. But then to further answer your question, guys can do this on your own time. But to answer your question in full is, like we mentioned, is creating that vulnerable space, is to maybe like having opportunities like this, where we get to have that space, where we get to answer questions like this. We might be neglecting an area that we weren't even aware of. It's just to get the mind juices flowing. Am I neglecting something? Is something wrong? Is something irritating me? Is there not a space that I can maybe move into that's better for me? And how do I address those things? It's being creative in that sense. But yeah, in overall, like we mentioned, is creating a space. If you want to engage with men, women in anything to do with mental health, again, to be empathetic is to first listen and observe. So if you see something is up, observing, see that's not going so well, going up to that person. But when we are up to that person, we're not giving advice. We are curious with them, because curiosity doesn't sound so direct. Oh, I see you are not so great today. Let's talk about that. That's very direct. The person might be closed off because they're not. When we talk in therapy, sometimes the person might come in and say, I have experienced this trauma, but it's too much for them to actually talk about. So we work on smaller things and we build up to that point. So what you're doing basically now is allowing them to speak or not. Do not be frustrated. If you can see there's something wrong, but they do not want to speak, it's you gave the opportunity. So the opportunity is there and will probably always be there. You presented yourself as an open person. So that is kind of an area you can engage with empathy is listen, no advice. You just listen to what they have to say and then you're curious with them. So normally people come to their own advice, their own conclusions of, yeah, maybe I should go see somebody because maybe 12 weeks without proper sleep is a problem or not normal. So then they kind of go, that might be something I should look at. And then you move from there. So that's being empathetic. It's not necessarily having to give advice, be in that experience with them. It's just listening. And you just have to be present. You don't really have to have the answer. If you don't know the answer, they probably also don't know the answer, but it's okay because then they know there's someone else that doesn't have an answer. And that's great. That means we are all in the same boat in some sense. So it kind of brings a sense of calm in that sense. Yeah.
Many men use fitness or work as an emotional outlet. Is this healthy or is this a form of avoidance?
I might not be able to give you a direct answer to this because everyone uses something specific to them. So when we ask this kind of question, we ask, what is the goal? What is the goal of using work? What is the goal of seeking out fitness? So I'm going to leave it at that point because it will be up to the person themselves to determine if it is a procrastination, am I moving away, am I avoiding something, or am I using it correctly? But if you want to give the broad general understanding, because some people, like we said, when we work with depression, anxiety, it might push, specifically talking to men now, into hyper-focusing on work because I'm avoiding something else. So when we have to look at that is, if I go to gym, to reset my mind, to get into a good space, to then maybe go back and deal with a challenge. Let's say there's a challenge going on. I can't really think right now. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to do what I need to do. It clears my mind. The endorphins are running. You feel better. You come back. You're in a better headspace. You came back to the challenge. If you do not come back to the challenge, you are now in avoidance. Means you're not addressing that issue. You would prefer that means the issue comes up again, then we run away again. But we don't come back and say, I'm going to address this challenge. The same with work. Am I here because I want to avoid something else? Is there something at home that's a challenge? Am I frustrated because I feel stuck? So I'm working further to a goal. It could be imaginative goal or a real goal, but making sure that it's not to avoid something else. It's actually working to that thing to address that challenge. So that's how I'm going to answer this question. But again, it is basically on the person itself. This is a very singular, what are you using and how? And is it avoidance or is it just something you do in your everyday life? Yeah.
How can we, both men and women, find a balance between discipline and self-compassion?
Mm-hmm. These are things that you want. You want to have discipline because discipline pushes you forward. It's the thing that makes you get up in the morning and do this or follow a routine or engage with something or somebody. So that's discipline, right? But how we're going to weigh this out is discipline, too much discipline is then away from the self-care aspect that we spoke about earlier. You're moving away from the part of human. You're moving into a robot that can wake up every morning, that doesn't sleep, so it just keeps going, it charges, and then it goes back to work. When we overdo that, then we are in the wrong in that side. We are now too much over into that aspect. We spill too much over and it's then harmful for us because we're pushing ourselves till the pain. This is where you'll get your burnout aspect. Then when we go to the self-compassion, again, too much self-compassion is then also a detriment because that's the part of going, it's okay, this happened, it's okay, but then it's more of an avoidance or more of actually not dealing with the situation. That's, in that regard, the negative aspect. So the balance is the best aspect, is to push yourself, but let's, for example, you had a goal this morning to do this specific work, to finish this project up, to do this before arriving here, to hear what I have to say about it, but you were to do that. But maybe 2 or 3 things bumped you off that course. Your goal was still to do this, you have done some of it, but something else from an external source or external aspect came and it pushed you a little bit out of that zone. So that's what that self-compassion is. I did try, I have done it. There has been, I've shown that I've tried to do it, but now The issue lies is like, okay, wasn't able to, but I put in the effort I could. And that's good. That's good enough. I'll get up the next morning and do that again, right? That's the self-compassion. It's not to avoid, it's to say, I did what I could in that situation. And then it's also coming towards that acceptance of, it's okay, I've pushed, but I need to also be caring on myself. I don't want to push to burnout. I don't want to damage myself in that regard. So it's finding that balance. It's a very important aspect. Do some retrospective. Just be like, okay, am I pushing myself too far? Should I take a break? And normally people with that the discipline goes over, breaks are then considered, it's not a good thing for me, I can't take a break. We should look at that because breaks are necessary. Why do we sleep? The body needs to do this. It needs to take a break. So it's a natural thing to take a break. So ensuring that that self-compassion comes through in that regard as well. Another aspect I'm going to add here is when you're in self-compassion and being determined, we know that the holidays are coming up. We get this a lot. People go on holiday, but they do not rest on holiday. So they go out to do everything they could not do in like, I want to see this person, I want to do that, I want to see this. And then they come back to work and they're like, I'm so tired from my holiday. And we're like, you see, it's burnout in that direction. So I just wanted to add that aspect as well. When in rest, discipline in rest is also important. Is rest for so long, sleep, make sure I get 6 hours sleep. Or I go on holiday, I plan 2 or 3 things. For example, if there's 3 concerts we'll never see again, we'll never come to South Africa, okay, include those. But if you're going to go back to Cape Town again, Table Mountain's not going to fly away. You can come back. It's then something you just take off your list because in that day you take to rest. So just discipline in rest is also important.
Josh, what role does social media and the digital culture play in helping and harming men's mental health?
Yes, that's also a very good question, especially AI is being a big thing now. But helpful, let's start with a positive aspect, is, again, you have sports guys actually talking about, I saw a practitioner, or I was stuck. You have leaders in big roles actually speaking about their mental health, which is very helpful because they're role models to the next generation. So the next generation sees this and they go, mental health is not this thing that I should avoid. It's a part of healthcare. It's a part of a human being. It's not something we kick out. It's a part of us. And then it helps because, like this, for example, we're going to be on social media now, it gets to a lot of people. The audience is wide. I have clients from overseas that are in countries that are not necessarily mental health friendly. So it's interesting that it's gone so far. It's bringing people in. It's helpful to reach people. You can do therapy online now. You don't have to see the person. You can save a few rands in petrol driving to your therapist. You can just Zoom call them and then we're there. There's nothing that stops us from doing that in that sense. So social media, all these things educate people. Then the negative part is what education is going out, what information is being reached to people. Is it from practitioners themselves? Is it from someone who believes this thing to be this way? Is it someone who's just read one article and now believes they are a master in this aspect? And then they skew that, and it's because it's also broad, it's also accessible, that it then skews the education, skews the information that goes around. So that's that negative aspect. Then with men specifically, you have, people displaying themselves, for example, masculinity, muscles, they're showing, oh, I've trained, but they don't always show the process of the training. So it is not realistic. It's this person is now showing themselves because they've gone through that process of getting to where they want to be, but there's no process. Or the person is very rich or famous, and then that sets a standard. But not everyone is going to be able to be the CEO of a company or a doctor. There are other spaces for men to also prosper in, and that does not mean it's going to get you millions, but it's still something personal. You're still doing what you want to do. You're helping, or you are, developing something. So you're still, thriving in that sense. But then it gives this skew ideas. This is what you need to do. This is the only way you can succeed. You need this. to do this. The young, our young men tend to have a lot of this when they come to your therapy sessions is, that falsehood of I'm going to be this big guy or this like financial dude that's on YouTube, which might not even be a real reality for that person. It might just be a face. It's not necessarily that they actually have or own that vehicle. It is just them to display some form of masculinity, but it might not be real masculinity. So that is in that negative aspect, that falsehoods that are displayed. But again, there are positives where there are people that are using the platforms to say, look what I am, look, I've trained, I'm fit, let's take you through a training regime. That's how I did it. I got to this point. Speaking to that is not necessarily hiding behind dramatic flair in the sense. So with that's basically how social media does influence the mental health space as well.
Hi Josh, I want to know today what gives you hope about the men's mental health conversations? What gives you hope about where it's heading?
Like any mental health, any place that provides an opportunity to speak in mental health is always a great opportunity. We try to grab it with both hands. But in general, what gives me hope is the change, the change in what our new generations come through. I mean, like I say, working at a school, there are kids that arrive. They might come there for disciplinary reasons or they might not be doing so well academically. They arrive there, they leave wanting more because they understand that it's not a scary thing. It's not I'm okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to, the person is not, I'm not disciplined. You're here for discipline, but I'm not someone to discipline you. I'm here to check what's going on. I'm here to listen to you. So that hope, that change, and a lot of the youth are changing. A lot of the youth, even though there's it's not necessarily stigma, but they will change it to, I go see my psychologist, or they'll use, you're depressed today, or I have OCD. So they use a lot of the psych terms, but maybe incorrectly. But the point still being is there's this discussion. It's being discussed. It's not this hidden aspect. It's not shameful. It's not, it's not this thing that it used to be, this thing that's just hidden. This aspect that we just say, I'm going to a doctor, it's fine, or the doctor's the better option between the two professionals. But a doctor is good up until a point, but a doctor studied medicine for the reason to cure medical conditions, where we studied to assist and cure mental conditions. So we are professionals in our own rights. We do study very hard to get where we are. And we make sure all the therapeutic approaches we use are bound in some science. There is science there's research there is concrete evidence that these things work. Like I said earlier, is finding the practitioner or the therapy that works for you is very important. But it's the social media realms, the realms where the youth are in, I think that is starting to change a lot. And then obviously your intermediate ages is where the role models are talking about. I went to a practitioner not because I had a mental health challenge, but maybe I wanted to better my swing. I wanted to bat better, or I when I'm in the scrum, I can't focus, or I can't do this. And that's sports psychology. It's there. That's there for them. It's there for a specific reason. It's not necessarily you had depression. You just have a block. So how do we undo that? There's a practitioner for that. And those conversations when your sports players, they come and they say, I did this, we do this. I mean, if you go to most of they have a physio, they have a psychologist, they have, all these big sports groups have these things available to them constantly. It's there. So it's not a hidden aspect, and being more open is the good thing. That's what the most positive is to hear the new generation talk about mental health in a very positive and meaningful outlet. Yeah.
On behalf of the Reg Group, we just want to say thank you so much, Joshua, for sharing your insights and really sharing your heart with us today. Really, it's encouraging to hear young people really speak about mental health, but also as a male, it gives us hope for the future. So we share our thank you with a gift to you. So I just want to, this is a token of our appreciation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So ladies and gentlemen, for those of you watching out there, yes, you are welcome to clap, everybody. So for those of you out there watching, we want to say it's important to take care of not just your physical well-being, but your mental well-being too. So until next time, from the Third Age Group and your girl with the name to Clem, see you. Bye.